you are, I need to be very transparent about this, the biggest donor to Reform UK. When you see a poll that says that that party is essentially on track to potentially get 18 seats, do you think that is money well spent for you? Do you think what you're doing, it should be more? Are you surprised or what?
Well, firstly, I think the party tell me my donation was the biggest of the campaign so far. So that would just be the first thing I'd say. Look, I did what I did, and I donated money to the Reform Party because I believe Nigel Farage and Richard Tice are the best political leaders to take this country forward, to face down these formidable challenges that we face. And these polls that show Reform with 18% of the vote, with 18 seats, are a demonstration that, look, Reform, if a vote for Reform is clearly a positive vote to take the country forward positively. If you're sitting at home and you want real change in Westminster, you're tired of the status quo, you're tired of either bad policies or people who put forward policies you agree with and then essentially do the total opposite. Frankly, the only option, the only vote that isn't a wasted vote, is a vote for Reform.
So you feel pleased about that outcome?
Well, look, I think the one thing that stands out... Is it the level that would you want a better level? Is it surprising to you? Well, everything's about the momentum. You know, in October 2022, Reform were polling at around 4%. You know, this poll shows them at 18%. Reform are up against the Conservative Party, the oldest political party in the world. Reform has been around in the blink of an eye compared to that. And yet, look at the remarkable momentum. And we have 18. One thing that I'm not particularly happy about is that we have 18% of the vote share in this poll with only 18 seats. Labour, 40% of the vote share, 450 seats, which just shows the formidable challenge that Reform are up against. But the momentum is clearly with the Reform Party. I'm incredibly optimistic about the future.
Well, I think it was the last time that you was on, actually. Your opposite, if you like, on this debate was Peter Hitchens, and he was telling all the viewers, you shouldn't vote for the likes of Reform UK. He's saying that is essentially a vote for Labour, and the point that Zia makes there in terms of Labour getting 40% of the vote and such a massive number of those seats. Does that kind of mean that the likes of Peter Hitchens' predictions ring true, or what?
Well, if this is accurate, I think Peter's arguments are moot, because the Conservative Party getting 60 seats, losing 22 members of the cabinet, including, by the way, I tweeted about this before I came on air, I didn't see the fact that Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt are the two of the people that go. Extraordinary. If that was to come to pass, then obviously...
And isn't that going to be the first time a sitting Prime Minister is going to lose his seat like that, Rishi Sunak, obviously?
It's the best of my understanding. The Liberals had something strange happen, I think, in the early 20th century, but I don't think it was like this. I think you had a former PM lose there. I think Herbert Asquith lost his seat in the subsequent election, but I think that's correct. And there are so many surprises, by the way, beyond just Reform and the Tories. The Green Party getting 4 seats, Ed Davey, Leader of the Opposition, would be the most crazy election in British history. But quickly on your point about the Conservatives, it's moot because they're in freefall. And if I was a Reform member or activist or leader, I would say there are still those 60 seats. There's 18 of us. We hunt them down in 2030, 2029. And if that does come to pass, I think you've got an even Stevens chance that it's the end of the Conservative Party. Because what is their unique selling point compared to Reform, which have this formidable operation, great social media, Nigel Farage? What's their selling point going to be? They're going to have no leadership. All their top people have just been decapitated. So it's existential for the Tories if that happens.
Well, towards the end of the programme, I'm going to bring a lady into the conversation many of you will be familiar with, Kemi Badenoch, but actually some people would argue, Aaron, well, you ask about the Tories, what about if they had someone like Kemi leading them at the next election then? That might change their fortunes.
She loses her seat. She loses her seat. Penny Mordaunt loses her seat. Rishi, Jeremy Hunt, Gillian Keegan. I mean, lots of people lose their seats. So, I mean, Kemi Badenoch would be the best of a bad bunch in terms of trying to take things forward if you were a Tory, I suppose. Maybe there's still Suella Braverman, but when you've got 60 MPs, it's going to be tremendously hard. You're going to have very few top people to pick from. There was that problem in 97 for the Conservatives, but they had, 156, 160 MPs? Now they're going to have 60.
And then is some of this, we were just talking in terms of percentage votes versus seats gained, is some of this stuff going to be an argument for proportional representation going forward, do you think?
100%. If you look at the Green and Reform tallies here, quick mathematics, so forgive me if I'm not entirely correct. In terms of vote share, 26% between them. In terms of MPs, 22. So I think it's around 3% of MPs for 26% of the vote. That is ridiculous. And the idea that the Lib Dems, with 5% less than Reform, will be the opposition, I don't think that's really admissible.
There's going to be millions upon millions of people in this country after this election who feel that they are unrepresented in Westminster and the system is totally unfair on them. I think the pressure is going to be overwhelming quite soon.
But didn't we have that before, though? Wasn't it 2015? Was it your political knowledge, your history knowledge is better than mine? Was it 2015 with UKIP, where they got millions of votes, in just that defection from Douglas Carswell? And people would have thought then that they was disenfranchised, disconnected and unrepresented then. So why didn't it happen then?
At that point, the Conservative Party weren't on the brink of a historic wipeout. I think to Erin's point, this is a historic moment. We should be under no illusions about what's happening in this country. There is a total repudiation of the Conservative Party by the British electorate, the likes of which we haven't seen before. I think that you should judge a party on their record. They've been in power for 14 years. I think that if you say that you're going to bring migration down to tens of thousands and you do that time after time after time, manifesto after manifesto, and then you do the total opposite, the idea that people won't feel betrayed by that is fanciful, and I think the country needs real change. And I think this poll tells us that we have a real opportunity to reform, excuse the pun, the centre-right of politics in this country.
And I'm sure, isn't it tonight is a deadline or something to get your photo ID if you've not already got that? If you're someone that says, oh, well, I want to vote, but now I need this ID, you can still get that, by the way. I will come on to immigration in a second after the break, because I know it's such a hot topic for many of you at home as well. But in terms of this Gamblegate, I mean, there was a suggestion today from Mel Stride that actually you could even explore banning MPs from gambling politically altogether. I mean, is that really the level that we've come to?
I think you probably have to have a very clear red line. That might be unfair in a way. I personally don't see a problem with somebody betting on themselves winning. I think what happened with Kevin Craig and a GB News favourite.
I know, I couldn't believe it. I'm telling you now, I could not believe it. When I heard that breaking news, it pricked my ears up. Well, then I saw that name, I was like, goodness gracious.
He voted on himself losing. I think that's very, very bad, because you're then creating incentives to not actually try your best as a candidate. But I think you need a very clear red line. I think if you're standing for public office as a councillor, as an MP, whatever, as a mayoral candidate, I think you should be prohibited from placing any kind of bets on a political nomination or race.
Do you agree with that?
I think it is a sign of the times and utterly ridiculous that we even have to be having this conversation. Again, I think most people at home would understand that if you're running for office and you start placing bets on the outcome of an election, i.e. something you can directly influence, that is just wrong. Yes, we probably should have a law against it. That would be my personal view. But again, I think it's an absolute indictment.
Against what?
Well, a law against, for example, if you're a candidate or if you're a politician, betting on outcomes that you have some influence over.
So just political. You wouldn't start saying people can't put a fiver on the Grand National or anything like that?
No, I think, look, my experience of this country, having been born and raised here, is that British people on the whole are pretty wise, pretty smart people, and we should largely leave them alone unless absolutely necessary. I don't think we should be taking away all pleasures from MPs, no matter how people feel. But again, it just comes back to where are we with ethics in the political system inside Westminster at the moment? If you just zoom out for a minute, if this was something in a BBC TV show, a drama, I think the script would get rejected because it's so absurd that you'd say there's absolutely no way. If this was in the thick of it, you'd say this would really be pushing it.
The fact
that we're now talking about 15 people and that could also go up. Again, I think that the country needs change. This is a symptom of really the corrupt culture that we have in Westminster now.
Do you agree with that? I can feel perhaps many of you will be nodding your head. And if you do agree with that,